Hi, my name is Sally Stumbo, and I'm a technical writer at Duo Security, which is now a part of Cisco. This conference is virtual now, but I want to make my prepared intro joke as though I were talking on a stage, so here we go. This is my first time giving a talk at a conference, but not my first time on a stage, as I played guitar in a few different cover bands over the years. Of course, those crowds felt less intimidating because everyone there was drinking and yelling, "Play Freebird." I've been a technical writer at Duo for 2 years, but before that, I spent about 2 years at Duo as a technical support engineer, helping network administrators troubleshoot issues and deploy two-factor authentication at their companies. Part of the success of the career transition to tech writing comes from having that support background to influence my current work. I came to the company with a background in non-technical customer support, so the technical aspect was a huge change and it felt like a lot to take on. I didn't have the computer networking or security background. I double majored in journalism and psychology. But I really threw myself into learning and trying to be good at my job. Eventually I got there, I knew what I was doing, and I was able to help our customers with whatever issues they had. In addition to helping our customers, part of my job was to update or write new articles for our knowledge base. As a person who loves writing and has a degree in it, this was my favorite part of the job. Not only did I get to write and improve articles, but I got to help customers and my team by sharing the knowledge that I learned. When there was an opening on our Global Knowledge and Communities team, or the GKC team, I was able to transition into my technical writer role so that I could work full-time on the knowledge base. In my time as a technical support engineer, I gained a good understanding of our customers' most common issues and insight into the approach our support team takes in solving a customer's issue. Now, as a technical writer, I'm able to use that experience to work on projects and develop content that will help deflect support volume. Duo uses a slightly modified version of the Knowledge-Centered Service, or KCS methodology, which means that in addition to the step-by-step product documentation created by our engineering team, we have an internal and a public knowledge base that captures any troubleshooting steps, common questions, and best practices for our customer and customer-facing teams internally. We publish as much of this content publicly as possible so that customers can help themselves rather than talking to support. But we also maintain lots of internal content so customer-facing teams can help resolve escalations as quickly and accurately as possible. The articles in our knowledge base are written and updated mostly by our support team and the knowledge team, but anyone in the company is welcome to contribute. Generally, KCS methodology says that the method will only work well if you integrate every part of it into your company. The reason that we use a modified version of it is because part of the KCS process involves letting lots of people in the company have publishing rights in the KB. We're a security company, so will we ever open publishing rights broadly in the company? We are never ever going to give publishing rights to everyone. Ever. It's not just grammar and formatting that we're worried about, but we also go through a verification process for articles before they're ever published. To avoid publishing anything that could, for example, recommend a workaround that results in a less secure environment, we keep publishing rights gated to the knowledge team. I'll tell you a little bit about my team. Including myself, there are 7 people on the knowledge team who handle other knowledge and community-related work. They do things like routinely audit articles to ensure everything is up to date, stay on top of product releases to make sure that we have KB content ready to go, write long-form guides, manage our Duo community forum, create technical documentation videos, manage technical communications with customers, and manage our customer-facing learning tool called Level Up. Level Up allows our customers to learn about how to use Duo. Basically, we create a lot of stuff that helps customers never need to pick up the phone and call our support team. My primary role is editing and publishing crowdsourced content from our customer-facing teams. Just last quarter, we published 266 new or updated articles written by our 27 support engineers alone, and about 70 total from people on a variety of other teams. Right now, we're all working remotely, but when I was in the office, it was helpful that the knowledge team was seated right next to the support team. It was really easy for me to walk over and talk to them if I had questions about an article they wrote or if I just wanted to learn more about a case they were working on. We also enjoy a close relationship with our product and engineering teams, which helps us stay on top of upcoming product changes. And they help us with reviewing and verifying our KB articles before they're published. While editing and publishing the crowdsourced articles was keeping me busy, I had an idea for an additional project that I could focus some time on during work. I had anecdotal evidence based on my experience in support that new customers were reaching out to the support team before reading the documentation or searching the knowledge base. For those of you who may be siloed from your support teams, you may not realize that this is a problem. I've experienced it firsthand while in support, but I also hear about it during my interactions with the support team. And I overheard the conversation many times from support calls since I sit close enough to overhear the support team when I'm in the office. I would overhear this. Yes, Gary, I'll send you the docs showing that. Yes, Gary, I'll send you a link to the KB article walking you through that process. But the question I had was, why is Gary calling in to ask questions that are covered in our KB? How might we be able to help Gary without him having to set aside his other IT duties that day so that he can make time to call us? The admins we support, who we internally refer to as Gary based on persona research at Duo, are usually in charge of managing the security team at their organization. Gary is an IT professional who is tasked with protecting the org's applications. Think about a Gary or a Garrett that you know. They're probably smart, technically inclined, someone who you think can figure anything out. So the problem goes like this. Gary chooses to use Duo to add two-factor authentication to protect the company accounts. Gary signs up for a Duo trial. At this point in the story, it becomes a choose-your-own-adventure novel. He could read our docs and KB and find what he needs. He could read through the emails he received when he first signed up and click on the links to learn more. He could read everything and not find what he needs and then call us, or he could skip reading everything altogether and just call us. There's always going to be a learning curve with a new product, but what if we tried a little bit harder to make sure Gary was prepared and properly informed? To better understand Gary's journey from the moment he signed up all the way to the moment he decided to contact support, I devised a plan to audit support cases created by customers in their first 90 days of administering their Duo account. So I was starting at the end result in order to learn what might be missing in the beginning stages. I wanted to compare the common questions that Gary and other customers were asking with the content they received in early stage email campaigns. I also plan to review whether the topics were covered well enough in our documentation or in the knowledge base already. And again, my support background combined with my familiarity with our KB would come in handy here. It's easy for me to look at a support case, read through it, and spot issue trends. I can quickly pick up on whether Gary misunderstood our documentation or whether he may not have read it at all. Either way represents an opportunity for us to clarify our content or make information easier to find. My goals for the audit were to, first, improve Gary's experience with Duo, both during onboarding and beyond. Maybe there were improvements we can make to the emails that Gary first received. Next was to decrease support volume by filling in the gaps of our knowledge base. Having more articles and better content means that people are more likely to find the answers they need. And of course, both of those things would result in making the knowledge team happy. Today, I'm going to talk about two different new customer case audits that I've done. For my first audit, there was too much data to simply focus on all cases ever created by new customers, so I needed to narrow my scope. I looked at cases that were created during the previous month, which at the time was July 2019. Cases that were created by admins who had signed up for their account in the previous 90 days, and cases that were tagged with our two biggest support drivers, the Duo admin panel, which is the administrative console our customers use to manage their users, and Microsoft integrations. Integrations are software that Duo offers to protect different applications such as Office 365. Going into the audit, I had some expectations. I thought that we were going to find a lot of little things that had not yet been added to the KB. Then we would add them and boom, support volume would eventually decrease. I thought that there would be a lot of edge case, complex troubleshooting issues that weren't documented simply because they were too obscure. And I thought that I would find a lot of opportunities to update and improve the email campaigns that go out to new customers, because I thought my audit would reveal all of the specific things that we needed to focus on when talking to new customers. For both categories, admin panel and Microsoft integrations, I was actually surprised by my findings. Out of the two questions here, which one do you think was the bigger support driver? The first one is asking where to download an application. The second one is asking about an error message that they need to troubleshoot. In this specific example, customers are writing more often about one of our most commonly used integrations simply to ask where they can download it. During the month of July 2019, we received 20 support emails or calls asking this question. The trend was that people were contacting support to ask basic, less technical questions. There were still the few cases describing an obscure use case. Overall, though, I found questions about basic concepts that were already explained in our documentation pages, but maybe not explained via individual articles in our KB. Some of the questions related to a basic concept that we all internally at Duo had tacit awareness of, but hadn't thought to explicitly document. As a result of those findings, I ended up creating an article that answers the question, what Duo application can I use to protect a workstation, laptop, or server? It's a question I answered tons of times when I was in support, but I didn't realize it was worth documenting until I looked at the data. My other topic during that audit, the Duo admin panel, had similar findings. We received a lot of questions about basic concepts while starting to use Duo. How to add users, how to add devices to users, how to activate the Duo Mobile Authenticator app. I looked at some of the long-form guides that we offer to help our customers administer their Duo accounts, and I was able to locate a few places where we should link to specific articles or link to the whole KB. In our nurture campaign emails that go out to new customers, we link to a list of resources at the bottom of each email. We did link to the KB, but the description felt kind of vague to me. I wondered if customers maybe didn't realize what types of articles we had based on the description. The original description was self-service support documentation, best practice guides, and product information in a single searchable location. Self-service means something to us internally, but I realized it might not make sense to some of our customers. I ended up changing this to frequently asked questions, technical troubleshooting articles, and best practice guides. At the same time that I worked on this project, my team had just hired a new person whose job is to create content for our customer-facing learning system called Level Up. I was able to share the results of my audit with him, and as a result, he placed more emphasis on the concepts that seem to puzzle our new customers the most often. And while it is important to note that I only focused on data from a single month during my audit, I knew from my support experience that many of these same customer questions had been lingering for a while. Without doing an in-depth audit into individual cases for a longer time period, we could at least see stats showing that these high-level categories tend to be big support drivers. By the end of this audit, I'd written or updated 31 articles, made changes to some of our most popular long-form guides, updated our nurture campaign emails, and I helped influence courses for the new customer-facing learning system. I also shared my results with our product team so that it could help shape future development. At Duo, the product team holds weekly meetings to share updates on their work and to hear from our CS teams regarding any current issues that have been popping up. They listen to our suggestions on product changes and they hear about frequent customer requests. The following quarter, I did another audit on new customer cases. This time, I focused on cases relating to our Duo Mobile Authenticator app and cases relating to the Duo Authentication proxy. In short, the Auth proxy is software that our customers use to handle authentication requests to the applications that they're securing with Duo. Think about a network admin, or as we call them, a Gary, that you know. If you know a Gary, you may know him as an expert. Gary can tell you all about the inner workings of firewalls and user directories and network diagrams. However, a majority of our support cases in this category were created because Gary was making a lot of simple mistakes. He sometimes forgot to open the right port on his firewall, he made a typo in the configuration file, or he had an issue with a service account password. That is to be expected, as there are a ton of small opportunities to make those little mistakes. The good news is that Duo has a connectivity troubleshooting tool, which is automatically bundled with our auth proxy software, and it helps solve minor issues like a misconfigured firewall. After looking at the data and seeing how often these issues caused a support ticket, I wondered why people were still contacting us so frequently instead of using that troubleshooting tool. Maybe they didn't know about the tool. It was mentioned in our auth proxy documentation, but something I know about Gary from all the time I spent with him over the phone or through email is that he doesn't need to go to the auth proxy documentation when he's first getting set up. He only goes to the docs page for whatever specific application he's setting up, and those pages only contain basic setup info about the auth proxy. Only a more advanced setup would require him to view those separate auth proxy documentation. And when I looked through our individual application docs pages, I realized that we don't mention the troubleshooting tool in any of them. Gary didn't know that that tool existed because he was only working from the individual pages. A big result from this audit was to update our individual docs pages with a mention of that connectivity tool. One important thing to mention is that when doing my audits, I filter out cases that don't have a Duo account associated with them. Our support team assists administrators who deploy Duo at their organizations. For security reasons, our support engineers can't and don't assist end users at the administrator's organization. If a support case doesn't have any type of Duo account associated with it, it likely means that an end user created the support case. Filtering those cases out allows me to make sure that I'm viewing the data that relates to the customers we do support, which is the admins. For the Duo Mobile category, my data started out with about 1,000 cases. When I filtered out the ones without an attached account, I was left with 76 cases. Out of those 76, only 5 of them came from an actual Duo administrator. Something that I saw often as a support engineer was that an end user would try to contact us. They would quickly realize that we only help administrators, and then they would go create a trial account of Duo because they thought that it would get them the help that they were looking for. I applaud their ingenuity, but unfortunately it couldn't work out that way. If those people were using Duo for work or school, then creating that trial account still would not allow us to help them with their organization's account. If they were using Duo Mobile as a third-party authenticator app for a service like Instagram or Snapchat, we don't have the ability to troubleshoot in those situations. In that case, the users would have to work with the service that they're protecting. While the original goal of my project was to investigate how we could help enable our customers and improve our knowledge offerings, this one led me down a different path since I was focusing on the end users who are not our direct customers. The big picture was that the experience is confusing for people who use Duo Mobile as an authenticator app for their personal accounts and not through the companies they work for. I was able to share these findings with our product team after my audit, and my data has helped influence a project focused on improving the experience for people who use Duo Mobile as a personal account. These audits helped us better understand which specific questions were driving support volume under the higher level topics, and led to a lot of productive conversations with the product team and helpful changes to our KB. We were able to help actively deflect support cases by creating articles for the questions that our customers were asking the most frequently. After doing a few of the new customer case audits, it triggered an idea to look at other angles of the support data that we're collecting. As some background info, in the last year, we've started asking our support engineers to attach KB articles to their support cases. So anytime a KB article helps them solve a case, they make an internal note of which article it was. Since we've been tracking which articles helped solve which cases, it opens up possibilities for other metrics that we can analyze. My next project after the new customer case audit was to look at the intersection of case topics that drive support volume but have low article attachment rates. This can show us where we might need more articles that provide less technical information and whether we might need a product change to make anything more intuitive. It's interesting to look at the layers of progress that it took to get us here. We started by incorporating KD contribution into the support engineer job. We were able to find different angles to view the data that we're already collecting, such as auditing cases that drive the most support volume for newer customers. We then asked support engineers to start tracking which KB articles help them solve their cases. And finally, we were able to use the KB article attachment data to investigate another perspective on the intersection of support and knowledge, which categories drive the most support volume yet have the lowest attachment rates for KB articles. There are a few takeaways that I would like you to consider. The first one is hire support people for content jobs. Maybe I'm biased because this is how I ended up in my role, but it makes so much sense to hire someone who already knows the product and knows how customers actually talk and think about the product. And who better than a support engineer? When I was in support, I spent all of my working hours learning every possible way that a customer could break their setup and all the caveats of the different integrations. It helps that I have a background in writing, but I think if you find someone who isn't an incredibly skilled writer but is motivated to learn, they probably have the potential to grow into the role. My next takeaway is use support issues to inform projects in different areas. More informed research into specific customer issues can lead to findings that you might not expect. Our product team was familiar with which categories were driving the most support volume, but until the projects I worked on, we hadn't done an in-depth case audit to research which specific aspects of the categories were resulting in more support calls. We can also use knowledge-based data to show when a specific issue or feature is well documented, and those articles have a lot of views, but it still causes support volume. In those cases, customers might still need improvements to the product to keep them from getting themselves into trouble. My next takeaway is to consider implementing KCS methodology. I'm not here to sell you on KCS, but I can say that it helps both our support and knowledge teams to be more successful. We've been using the basic framework at Duo for years. Support engineers contribute to the knowledge base, and we continuously audit and improve content. I recently went through the courses to become KCS V6 Practices certified, and I've been using what I learned toward collecting and analyzing data that we haven't looked at before and improving our KB article structure so that it's easier for people to write articles and easier for customers to consume those articles. My next point, it's probably worth noting that I started writing out this talk before a worldwide pandemic took place. That point is, consider changing the office seating arrangement. Right now, so many things are up in the air, including if or when our places of work will truly go back to normal, or if we'll see a huge increase of people working remotely from home permanently. If you do go back to the office eventually, consider seating your documentation team near the support engineers. At the Duo office, our knowledge team was always seated near support. It was easy to overhear a phone conversation and learn about a new issue being reported, or if someone wrote a KB article, I could just walk over and talk to them about it. Now that so many of us are remote and might be for a while, that advice could be altered. Go out of your way to talk to people. If you use a chat app for work, we use Slack here at Duo, start conversations in public channels. Ask your coworkers and support what customer issues have been common lately. Invite discussion into your knowledge channel. In closing, I'll leave you with this thought. While it seems daunting to build a knowledge practice from scratch, it's important to remember that it took our team over 5 years to get to a place where we could start comparing attachment rates with top ticket driving categories. Knowledge is a lengthy and complicated journey. My project of walking backwards through the customer steps was a small part of that journey, but it added another level to our knowledge practice for us to keep building on. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of first start out by just saying that I love Duo and two-factor auth and all that good stuff. It's super important, and I definitely appreciate the work that y'all do. So thank you for speaking and for doing that. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit more kind of about, I know you mentioned kind of being a a security focused company, and that kind of you have to hold kind of the publishing the publishing reins, if you will. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of like the process behind what kind of looking at the security aspects of anything you're publishing, like what that looks like?
Yeah, so when I receive article drafts, they can come from anybody in the company, but usually it's people on the customer support team. So when I get those, I look through them for anything that might be obvious that we don't want to include publicly, like something that might tell people how to break Duo or how to like accidentally bypass 2FA or something. So before I publish anything, if I don't fully understand it, which I'm not an engineer, so it happens all the time, I go to an engineering team and find a subject matter expert who can review it and tell me yes or no on whether it can be public. And typically if something cannot be public, we have a reason for that we put in the internal notes. So people at Duo who are looking at that article will be able to read that and understand what information they can give out to customers, right, so you have like what they can. Like
a security guide that's kind of like a style guide or something along those lines.
In a way, yeah. It's mostly talking to subject matter experts, sometimes having to go to our specific security team, but usually the engineers for each different product of Duo will have the information and know.
So kind of the first question during the talk was from Sean, and he asked, how do you source feedback from the community to improve the articles and by proxy improve case deflection?
Yeah, I think I saw that question in there. So that question is about how we find people to submit the articles.
Yeah, I think just like kind of how you get feedback from everyone. But he's saying yes in the chat here, so it sounds like you're on the right.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So right now, all of our support engineers are actually required to write or update a certain number of articles every quarter. So that makes it easy for us to definitely get submissions from them. But some people, it comes more naturally to them than others. So they'll end up sending us more than what they're expected to send. Also, updating the KB is baked into their workflow. So it's part of their training that they're supposed to update or write a new article if they're working with a customer on an issue and they couldn't resolve that issue by searching our KB. So they may have had to go to an engineer or something or file an escalation of it. Either way, once they find the answer, what they should be doing if the process is being followed is adding that information somewhere in the KB, either updating something that exists or writing a new one. So having that baked into the process, that really helps us get people to help contribute to the KB.
Yeah, no, and so it kind of everyone who's interacting with customers are then kind of funneling that back up into the support document. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So the next one from Lauren is, how do you handle content management, like particularly around kind of avoiding duplication and that kind of stuff when other teams are creating content? Does the verification and review and auditing kind of include that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, so there's probably two different parts to that. One of them is when I receive a draft, I'm pretty well versed in what we have in our KB, but just in case, I do usually do a search and make sure, and I look at related articles. Information isn't already there, and I'm checking for places where that information might make sense to add or be added. And the other thing is there's another member of my team who does audits of our KB every quarter. So she goes through to make sure that things are updated, that there's nothing out of date or anything that's been changed in the product. So she has a certain number of KB articles that she looks at, make sure those are all good. And she also kind of checks for duplicates during that process. Because of her doing those audits, she's also really familiar with what we have in the KB.
So I have a couple more kind of process questions. I think people are really curious about kind of the exact kind of mechanics. And so this one is from Brooke, and just curious about how your KCS runs. Like, how do you actually kind of receive the drafts from others? Is there like a form or a JIRA ticket, or how is the kind of process that are working?
Yeah, so we use Salesforce. So our knowledge team uses it and our support engineers use it. So they just create a new draft in Salesforce and assign it to me, and then that's how I end up getting those to work on them.
Yeah, so it's all just kind of within that Salesforce platform and kind of work within that. And I imagine there's a decent amount of complexity inside of Salesforce, just from my light understanding. Very cool. And so this is from Greg, and they were wondering, if you're not the content manager of the KB, what advice do you have for writers who believe that your practices would help and improve their stuff? So maybe like, how would you kind of advocate for some of these approaches for other people?
That's a good question. I don't know. I think it's important to always bring up issues that you see with the KB. So if you're noticing that you're not getting a lot of people updating them, then you could talk to your manager or something about trying to incorporate that into the process. Am I along the right lines of how that question
I think
was?
so. I mean, I think it's, just kind of, if you're not kind of a person inside the KB, I mean, I'm not perfectly sure what the question was, but kind of just how to kind of implement or advocate for some of this stuff, which is maybe different than when you don't have, control or whatever. But no, I think that pretty much touches on.
Yeah, and one thing about KCS methodology specifically is if you go and look at their website and read through all of their stuff or take their courses, they do have information about how to talk to executives or managers or people at your company to kind of get some buy-in for that process. So for that specifically, there is actually documentation out there about how to do that.
Cool. And so here's another one from Courtney, and she talks about a little bit about kind of soliciting best practice and use cases from the teams. I think you already touched on that. But then there's also how do you kind of choose the audience for your audit? And then what kind of software do you use to actually, I think, dig into the audit itself or really understand it?
Yeah, so for my first audit, I just chose the 2 most popular support topics because our TSEs categorize everything with tags. So I looked at the things that were being tagged the most often in the prior quarter. So for that quarter, it was Microsoft integrations and our Duo admin panel. And the reason I only chose those top 2 was because there were just so many cases that I needed to narrow the scope so that I can manage it within a quarter. And the reason that I looked at cases from new customers specifically was because I thought that it would help us see what concepts are the most difficult to understand for new people. And so places that we could improve our docs for people who are brand new to Duo.
Yeah. Sure, go ahead.
And then the second question. Yeah, sorry. The second question was about what software to use for a project like that. Okay. So like I was saying earlier, we use Salesforce to track all of our support cases. And I'm really fortunate that we have some awesome people in our customer success operations team who did all of the magic of pulling the data for me. So it did all come out of Salesforce, but really I was working directly from a Google spreadsheet and somebody else just waved a magic wand and got all of the stuff for me that I asked for.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, I saw a few comments in the chat that were kind of like, yes, we're doing an audit and it's way too big. And there's a lot of commentary on that where it was like, yeah, like keeping it manageable and keeping it focused. I think also probably helps you kind of understand the changes and the results from those, right? Like I would imagine if you change everything, you don't really know what worked.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like at first I didn't want to do just 2 topics because I really wanted to see what in all of Duo was really confusing the new customers. But after doing a few of these in a row, I realized it really helped to only focus on 2 topics because then I could really dig in and see what was confusing people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I have one here from Brian who's kind of asking, who or what did you get KCS certified through? Like maybe, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there is this whole consortium for that. I'm looking in a tab in my browser to see if I have something open. There's the kcsacademy.net. So they have like training classes and certifications on there that you can check out.
Very cool. All right. Well, I think that is all the questions. Hopefully I didn't miss any because I'm I'm not as experienced at this as Andre is, but I think we're just about at time. So is there anything else that you kind of wanted to mention, or any last kind of takeaways for folks?
I don't have anything else. It was really hard for me to hear my own voice and listen to that talk again. But thank you so much, everybody, for listening to it and asking all these great questions.
Yeah, no, and definitely feel free to stick around and kind of answer folks if they chat with you or whatever. But otherwise, I think we're gonna get back to the main stage, and you are now free to go enjoy the rest of your day with no scary thing hanging over your head.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.